Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. Saul Canelo Alvarez faces Jaime Munguia on Saturday, May the 4th. Do I need to mention Canelo? Do I need to mention Munguia? Probably more than I need to mention Canelo. I must be honest, I'm finding this fight difficult to sort of get up for. I've never been Canelo's greatest fan. I think he's extremely good. But I'll get into the reasons why he's never really sort of floated my boat entirely. But just a quick sort of, we'll talk about Canelo's recent form anyway. I mean, he's 60 wins with 39 KOs, 2 defeats, one to Mayweather, one to Dimitri Bivol at light heavy. And when he fought Mayweather, of course, he was just a kid. 2 draws. One early on in his career, and then of course 2 Golovkin in the first fight. He was last seen in September of last year, outpointing Jamel Charlo, jumped up 2 weight divisions. He dominated Charlo, but Charlo lacked a lot of, lacked ambition. He seemed to be there for the paycheck, and he seemed to be there for the paycheck. That's basically it. That's the only thing he was there for. He wasn't there to win. He got floored, and he kind of, I think it was round 6-7, he got floored in one of the middle rounds, and after that he just shut up shop, pulled down the shutters, that's your lot, and sort of navigated his way through the 12 rounds, and Canelo won very widely. I think Charlo might have got 1 or 2 rounds on a couple of cards maybe, but Prior to that, a much better fight, a much more gallant performance by a challenger, which was John Ryder, who lost a unanimous 12-round decision. Again, he was on the floor in middle rounds. Fifth round, was it? And it looked like Canelo was just going to finish him off, but he didn't. And in actual fact, Ryder kind of regrouped, managed to sort of reset himself to some degree, and he was trying to win right until the end. He didn't win many rounds. I think he won 1 or 2, maybe 3 at the very most. I don't think he won 3. No, 3 is an exaggeration. Excuse me, but Ryder at least, if you've got to lose, there's a way to lose, and that way is to go out on your shield, to use the cliche. And Ryder most certainly did that. The fact that he went the 12-round distance was to his credit, and it was in the Cauldron in Mexico. And again, it was a Cinco de Mayo fight, so crowd rout and so on and so forth. But prior to that, you had Canelo fighting Gennady Golovkin for the 3rd time, which is kind of a meaningless fight. That was in September of 2022, defending his undisputed super-middleweight title, titles, plural maybe, which he collected within a calendar year, which was a tremendous achievement, there's no doubt about it. But how he quite did it, I'll get to that in a moment. But I thought the 3rd Golovkin fight was kind of meaningless. It's up at super middleweight. Golovkin has never, ever been a super middleweight. Golovkin was pushing 40 at the time, was basically outclassed almost for the first 6 rounds, for the first maybe 8 rounds, and then finally got his engine running and did a little bit of work in the last third of the fight. But it was, amazingly, the judges had it a lot closer than I thought it was, which is ironic because a lot of people believe that Golovkin won at least the first of the fights of the trilogy, if not the first and the second. This one, I thought Canelo pretty much dominated it, but I looked at the cards and I think there were a couple of 116, 112s in there, which... No, I didn't have that at all. It might have even been a 115, 113. I don't know. Anyway, I definitely thought Canelo won that fight. Golovkin, as far as I could see, only won rounds in... He only looked competitive, to be honest, in the last third of the fight. But prior to that, again in 2022, which was around Cinco de Mayo, again, he always fights on Cinco de Mayo, May the 5th or around about that date, Canelo lost to Dimitri Bivol, and he did lose. It was a legitimate... the old line about, you've got to knock him out to get a draw, in the past has applied to Canelo, but definitely Bivol won most of the rounds. And I actually picked Bivol to win, but I thought he might get robbed. And if you look at the first 4 rounds, the scoring on the first 4 rounds, they were setting it up for Canelo to get the decision over Bivol, but they reckoned without Bivol's industry and the fact that he was so much busier, and he matched Canelo for an IQ. In fact, his IQ was probably better than Canelo's, and they just couldn't rob him. They couldn't rob him. It was Bivol just did too much work. And it was a unanimous decision, quite rightly so as well. Prior to that, we had that terrific year when Canelo, I say a year, within 12 months anyway, where Canelo beat, Callum Smith, Avni Yildirim was a voluntary defence, I think, Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant. I mean, those are some good wins. Those are some good. Yildirim, forget about it. He was there for the paycheck. Completely outclassed. God knows how he was a mandatory contender. Can you believe that? God Almighty. Yeah. But no doubt about it. Canelo was. I was very disappointed in Callum Smith's performance. I thought it was terrible. Completely negative. Saunders at least tried for a while. I mean, he's a sort of crafty, tricky southpaw type, but couldn't hold off Canelo. Caleb Plant, yeah, he's got something about him. I always thought Caleb Plant was he had a lot of flash and dash. He's a bit of a jabber and mover, but he got chopped down eventually. The Danny Jacobs fight, if you go back to 2019, I mean, that was for middleweight belts, but that's one of Canelo's better wins, I think. And I think afterwards or just before that, he beat Kovalev for one of the light heavyweight belts. Kovalev had seen so much better days, was coming off that war with Yard, and had about 11 weeks to get ready for Canelo. And you might say, well, 11 weeks is more than enough. Yeah, it probably is. Probably in the old days, he used to fight every month. World-class fighters used to fight every month, but yeah. And Kovalev was actually doing quite well against Canelo, and he just couldn't hold him off. Ended up getting chinned. But I think by that point, Kovalev's lifestyle outside of the ring had caught up with him, and it eroded his punch resistance. So I won't go back any further because you know about the the 2 Golovkin fights prior to the first and the third one, the drawn fight and the second fight. Now I thought Canelo won the second fight legitimately. I thought he edged him on that, a couple of points maybe. The first fight is the controversial one because everyone says that Golovkin got robbed, and I don't think he did get robbed. I thought that was a close, tough, competitive fight. I think it's a myth that Golovkin was robbed. A robbery is not a close fight that ends up a draw. A robbery is a fight that is not remotely close and ends up a draw. Okay, and that was a tough fight, that first fight. But there are other fights where I definitely think Canelo has lost. I mean, the one that no one seems to agree with me on, that I swear I've watched this 3-4 times from start to finish. I cannot believe that more people don't feel that this is the case, that what I'm about to say is it's not an opinion that's shared by people. It's the Cotto fight. I thought Cotto beat Canelo. And I don't think he beat him by a point or two. I had him, I think, 117, 111, 116, 112. So I thought he won that fight. And I'll debate anyone about it, but I know I'm in a very small minority. Most people seem to think that, no, Canelo beat Cotto. I just couldn't see it. I honestly couldn't see it. And if you go way back, Lara, Oslandi Lara fought him. I thought Lara beat him. And also sometimes it's not the fact that Canelo gets the decision, it's just the width of the cards. If you look at some of the cards from the past, there is this, incredible bias, particularly by the WBC. There has been, especially in LA, and of course Mexico as well, towards Canelo, and it irritates me. It irritates me. Now, nowhere was the bias bigger than when Canelo failed a PED test and blamed it on tainted meat and got some token 6-month backdated bullshit so-called ban. and he essentially got away with it. He got away with failing a PED test. Now, that really pisses me off because I don't give people free passes on PED tests. And in fact, although I will stop short of saying that I believe this to be a fact, I am very, very, very suspicious that Canelo didn't carry on, shall we say, manufacturing his body with the help of masking agents and so on into that super middleweight division. When you consider that he always, and I know he was a lot younger, I take the point, he was a lot younger, but it's the fact that he always claimed to be a very small middleweight for many, many years. And suddenly, once he beat Golovkin, who he tried to age out, it didn't quite work. He got the draw and then he edged past him in the rematch. Suddenly he moves up to super middleweight and he's beating up Callum Smith. Callum Smith, his performance was awful. He was way, way, way too negative, but he is a big, strong unit. Maybe Callum Smith he probably was struggling at 168. There's no doubt about that. But I take that on board. But at the same time, just the look of his body, the way it looked like he had that manufactured physique, not unlike certain others who I'm very, very suspicious of. Manny Pacquiao, Manuel Marquez, I could go on, but I won't. I've always been suspicious of Canelo's, how he makes weight, how he puts on weight and so on. But that's just a matter of conjecture. None of us can prove it, but he definitely did fail a PED test as far as I'm concerned. And he got away with it as far as I'm concerned, is what I mean. We all know he failed. He got away with it. There was no sanction whatsoever against him, and I hate that. I just hate it. And I don't listen to any of these idiots who say, well, they're all at it. No, they're not all at it. A lot of them aren't at it. And the ones that aren't at it are the ones that suffer because the ones that are at it get away with it. Okay? So that's Canelo. Never been my favourite fighter, although he is unquestionably very, very good. I don't consider him to be as great as Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., I think Chavez Sr. was, I didn't watch him from the start. Wasn't aware of him at the start. Don't forget, I'm going back to the days long before the internet. But certainly from his back end of his super featherweight days, they used to show clips of him and I used to get old VHS tapes of him and I really, really liked him. And then once he beat Edwin Rosario at lightweight, beaten up Rosario and stopped him, I thought, wow, this guy really is good. And then, of course, from there on in, he created his legend. So that's Canelo. I spent way too much time talking about him than I intended to. Let's move on to Jaime Munguia. Now, Jaime Munguia, instantly you're seeing, you notice the height. You very rarely get 6 foot tall Mexicans. And his age is interesting as well because he's 27 now. So if he's not in his prime, he's coming into it, which is really good. He is undefeated. He's undefeated in 43 fights with 34 KOs, no draws, no defeats. And he is a former WBO light middleweight. Yeah, WBO light middleweight title holder. God knows how he made 154 with that frame. Never... early on in his career, certainly as a younger man, he never really lived the life outside of the ring. I remember seeing him against Saddam Ali when he won that WBO title, and he smashed right through Ali, and it was ridiculous. It looked like he was two weight divisions bigger. And then he fought Liam Smith. And with Jaime Munguia, you could see the flaws, the defensive flaws, and the fact that he could be how he could be beaten. He was just too damn big at 154. And a lot of people use the phrase weight bully. I'm not sure I agree with that because if you can make a weight, you can make a weight. If you make it legitimately and legally, I ain't really got a problem with it. And he had some. Liam Smith went the distance, and then I think. Takashi Inoue went the distance with him. That was, I think, a world title defence. And Dennis Hogan was another. Was the Dennis Hogan one? Yeah, it was at 154, wasn't it? Wasn't it? Yeah, of course it was. Hogan's a super welterweight. Yeah. Okay, and then Munguia moved up to middleweight, and he didn't really do anything. Not really, when you think about it. I mean, you know, Spike O'Sullivan took him into was it the 11th or the 12th? Certainly one of the last rounds. Toriano Johnson is a pretty decent gatekeeper type. So he fought him. I think he stopped him in 6, or he retired after 6 or 7, I think. Gabe Rosado, terrific gatekeeper. A lot of respect for Gabe Rosado. That was a unanimous decision, as you might expect. And then he was fighting, Jimmy Kilrain Kelly. What was that? That was a 160? No, that was a 160, wasn't it? Yeah, I think so. I mean, this wasn't really. He wasn't really setting the world alight. And then he moved up to 168 only 2 fights ago, and he fought Sergei Derevyanchenko, who, as you know, is, if ever there was a gatekeeper for the elite fighters, it's Derevyanchenko, because this guy he'll have a row with anyone, he'll go in with anyone, he'll fight anyone. Only the very best will beat him. A lot of people thought he beat Gennady Golovkin. He certainly hurt Golovkin to the body. I remember that big time. Who else did he fought? Danny Jacobs. I mean, but I think he got floored against both Golovkin and Jacobs. That probably cost him. Can't remember the cards against the Jacobs fight. And it was a fantastic fight, Munguia versus Derevyanchenko. Really great. We're going back to mid last year. Was it May, June, July? One of the mid months. And Derevyanchenko. There's a little tale behind that fight, actually, which I think be careful what you wish for, because Munguia, his team, wanted to cut that fight from 12 rounds to 10. And Derevyanchenko said no. And I think I'm right in saying after 10 rounds, Derevyanchenko was ahead. But because he'd insisted on those last 2 rounds, he ended up getting floored. It was a body punch in the final round. And it may have cost him the fight. I'm not sure about the cards exactly. I think he was ahead after 10. So if he'd have accepted the 10-round deal, he'd have beaten Munguia. But sometimes, our little plans go wrong. And then after that baptism by fire at 168, Munguia moves up and faces John Ryder. Nothing but respect for John Ryder. He got stopped in 9 rounds. He was coming off a hellacious gallant beating to Canelo. And I got that one right. That's another one I won a few quid on, because I picked Munguia to stop him in the last 4 rounds, and it was the 9th. And Ryder was on the floor 3 times, 2nd, 4th, and I don't know. I can't remember now. Can't remember offhand. But anyway, he was down a few times, and it was after that he retired. John Ryder. He made a few good quid. Won some belts, was a very, very good, tough world-level pro. Came back from defeats, which takes a lot of doing. But back-to-back defeats to Munguia and Canelo were enough for him, and he walked off into the sunset, and good luck to the guy. So only those 2 fights, though. I mean, the Munguia looked good against Ryder. But Ryder, you've got to ask the question, Ryder coming off that Canelo beating, that's the type of pounding that will take years off you. And Ryder, of course, wasn't a particularly young man anyway. He certainly wasn't a young fighter. So perhaps it flattered to deceive the victory for Munguia. So Munguia has only had 2 fights at 168, Derevyanchenko and Ryder, whereas Canelo, as we know, unified the whole division within 12 months and has made defences. So even though we're talking 5'8" versus 6 foot, it's a very stocky 5'8", regardless of how he got there. He's a very stocky, powerful 5'8" fighter, and in against a guy who 168 may be his natural weight now, because if you're 27, you're putting on weight naturally and so on. But the man who's settled into the weight, who's had more time to do it, a lot more time to do it, is without question Canelo Alvarez. Now, is that going to be the difference between the 2 fighters when they meet? I would say no. It's not. That's not going to be. That might be a reason, but it won't be the sole reason. I think Canelo is just a better overall fighter than Munguia. That is to say, he's got a higher ring IQ. He's far more. He's got more tools in his box, more variety. He's got more imagination. I think Munguia, under Eric Morales as his trainer, has probably improved. But then at 27, again, you're coming into your prime. You've got all the experience that a fighter needs. He's had 43 pro fights. He should be at the point where he's, getting to the point where he's as good as he's going to be. And he should be able to, he's got a good jab, for example. He likes to have a punch-up, though. That's the problem with Munguia. And that's the wrong thing to do against Canelo, because Canelo might be 33, and I think he's on the downside of his career. I don't think he's past it. I don't think he's shot. I don't think that there are many people that can beat Canelo. He's still one of the top 10, I'd probably say he was one of the top 6 or 7 fighters in the world, But do I see Munguia being in the right place at the right time? It's possible. He hits hard. Canelo, as we know, has a fantastic chin. 36 minutes against someone as intelligent as Canelo, as experienced as Canelo, as varied and imaginative as Canelo. Yeah, I don't think Munguia can win enough rounds to defeat Alvarez on points. I think if it's remotely close, I think Canelo gets it. He is, after all, the great Mexican, icon, if you like. Munguia, also a Mexican. And there's one other thing, just as an aside, that I didn't like, and that was that when the fight was announced, Munguia was very sort of reverent towards Canelo. I don't like to see that. Okay, yeah, he's a great fighter. I've looked up to him. He represents Mexico. All this sort of stuff he was coming out with. Well, no, mate, you're going to fight him. I don't want to hear any of that stuff. Even if you think it, I'm not saying you have to be rude. You have to trash talk, but you say, I'm coming. I want to hear, I'm coming to win. Yes, he's been a great fighter, but I'm in the right. This is my time now. That's what I want to hear from people. And I want to hear, I love you. You're wonderful. You're my inspiration. All this bollocks. I want to hear some spite. I want to hear some bad intentions. And I wasn't hearing that from Munguia. Now, a lot of people are unhappy that Munguia is even facing Canelo because they wanted to see David Benavidez. Benavidez has jumped up to light heavy. He got the opportunity to fight the comeback in Gvozdyk. And yes, I think Benavidez earned his fight against Canelo, and Canelo has, for all intents and purposes, avoided him. Let's be honest. And that's weird because I think Canelo can beat David Benavidez. I was never someone who thought, Benavidez was going to wreck Canelo. No, I never thought that. In fact, I would probably make Canelo at least a 60-40 favourite in that fight. So I never quite got why people were, as good as Benavidez is, I never quite got why number one, why people thought Benavidez had the beating of Canelo, like automatically. And number two, why Canelo wouldn't fight him. Because Canelo had previously said, I'm not fighting another Mexican fighter, I'm not fighting it. And then suddenly along comes Munguia as an option. All right, I'll fight you then. And I'm also, but to be honest with you, apart from the fact that I can understand why people want to see Benavidez against Canelo, which, yeah, I would prefer to see that than Munguia. The one I'm really annoyed about is David Morrell, because I've said for a couple of years now, I think David Morrell will be the last man standing at 168. I think I would pick him to beat Benavidez, Munguia, and Canelo. And I know he's only had a handful of fights. I know what people are going to say. From what I've heard about him in the gym, people have told me, American friends and contacts have told me about him. What I see when he's in the ring, I know he hasn't beaten anyone, elite. But I just feel this guy, if he's given the opportunity, will be the last man standing. And he has also moved to light heavyweight, which is a shame, a real shame. So how do I think Munguia is going to do against Alvarez? Well, I think, again, I'm going to use another cliche, hoary old cliche, which is that styles make fights. And although I think Munguia is physically stronger at 168, his dimensions are bigger than Canelo's. I think Munguia's style is that he likes to get involved. He will probably give up the height and the wingspan and everything. I think Canelo will, for the first 6 rounds, I can see this being very, very competitive. Maybe even the first 7-8 rounds. But I do see Canelo he'll punch to the body. He'll aim for the body. And if the body ain't available, he'll do what he did against Callum Smith, which is bang to the biceps and the forearms. He doesn't mind. He will keep trying to chop down Munguia. And I think he will, even though, like I say, for the first 6 rounds, it's going to be competitive. I think Munguia, I mean, I get back to that, I get back to the Derevyanchenko fight. Derevyanchenko he almost had Munguia. Was it the 4th or 5th round? He almost had him out of there. I mean, he was really railing on Munguia. And I think if Munguia is that cavalier and that disdainful of defence, and he actually gets down and dirty with Canelo, I see Canelo doing the same thing, but maybe finishing him off. I don't think it will. I think there will be competitive rounds. There will be the first half will probably be competitive, but I think Canelo will eventually take over. He'll navigate his way through those rounds. He's got an excellent jaw, as we know, and I think with all those 12 rounders under his belt, even though he's a veteran, this is where experience will come into play. Being able to get through those 36 minutes, and even something like the Bivol loss, he will have learned from that, even at his relatively advanced age. So I see him chopping down Jaime Munguia, stopping him probably on his feet, maybe a corner retirement in 10 rounds. I think Canelo will win this fight. Stops him in 10 rounds. But it'll be a decent punch-up, decent fight to watch. But yeah, I see Canelo winning. A stoppage or corner retirement in 10 rounds. That's going to be my prediction. So what is your prediction? Leave your comments below. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the like button, all that stuff I always say at the end of every video. Yeah, spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing and let me know your opinions. I like to know your opinions, because this is, without your opinions, without your comments, it's just an echo chamber, and that's boring. So leave your comments below. All right, guys and ladies, I will speak to you soon, and bye for now.